Well, Mr. Speaker, firstly, can I welcome the offer of cooperation and help from the Shadow Chancellor. I welcome that, especially as he appears to have changed his tune somewhat in relation to what remedies he now thinks are appropriate. And I hope that he will now recognise that it is necessary for governments to play an active role in trying to resolve the problems that we face in order to produce greater stability as well as to helping depositors. And I disagree with him in one respect in particular. Our position is not that you have to choose between generalised measures of support or looking at particular cases on a case-by-case basis. When, for example, we were confronted with the problems in Bradford and Bingley 10 days ago, we had to deal with that specific case because the problems there were peculiar to that particular bank. The same with Northern Rock. The same different issues, particular issues arose in relation to Lloyds to ASB. But it is necessary, in addition to dealing with a case-by-case approach, to have an overall approach. That's why the special liquidity scheme, which the Bank of England operates, was put in place. There will be other measures too. I'm glad that he welcomes the bill, and I hope we will get support for the measures there. And I very much welcome the fact that he and the honourable gentleman who speaks for the Liberal Democrats are anxious to ensure that we try and get this legislation onto the statute book by the middle of February next year, when the temporary provisions we took to take Northern Rock into temporary public ownership expire. That would be extremely helpful and useful. So I do welcome his support, although I notice his tendency to lapse into point scoring and party politics. It didn't take long to reappear. I have to say to him, I have to say to him, and I just make this one point in passing, that I think our interest rates of 5% now, whilst obviously people have their views on that, but they do compare rather favourably to the 15% interest rates that we had some 15 years ago. Now, he then goes on to raise some perfectly pertinent points which I want to deal with. Firstly, in relation to the question of guarantees and what happened over the weekend. It is the case that, as far as I'm aware, no government or the European Commission was made aware of what the Irish government was proposing to do last week. I took that matter up with Brian Lenihan, the Irish Finance Minister, and he explained that they did this because in their judgment, they needed to take action because of what was happening in Europe. And I understand that, but it does demonstrate the problems that arise when member states take unilateral action, because, of course, it does have a knock-on effect for other member states. The same with Germany. Germany took action, an announced action yesterday, where, as I understand it, they have made a declaration. It's not something that's legally binding, it's a political declaration in relation to guarantees. It does emphasise the need for us all to work together, which is why from last night we've been working with the French presidency to get a declaration from all member states pledging to work together, to act together. And as I said in my statement, that statement was finally agreed just an hour ago. And I very much hope that when we meet in Luxembourg tomorrow, we will agree that whatever is done, that European member states act together, because I think that is very important. Otherwise, we will end up with a situation that is confused, both not just to depositors, but also to institutions themselves. So that is very, very important. In relation to the points the honourable gentleman makes about accounting rules, this is something that the European Union is looking at. Last Friday, the International Accounting Standards Board said that it was going to look at the lessons to be drawn from what has been happening in markets and to see whether or not any changes ought to be made, and also to make sure that we don't find that the European rules and the American rules start to diverge. What I would say to the honourable gentleman is this, though, that I think it would be a huge mistake to assume that if you change the accounting rules, you'll sort the problem out. I think that, especially at this time, markets want to know exactly what is going on, and they don't want to think that the situation is apparently improved simply because the way in which these things are accounted for are different. So this is not something that somehow is a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's something that needs to be looked at, but doesn't provide the answer that I think the honourable gentleman might have been suggesting. Finally, in relation to the question of capital, I said in my statement that we stand ready to look at the issues of liquidity, capital and regulation. They all need to be looked at, and we are ready to do whatever is necessary. What I also went on to say is that I think, and here I agree with the Honourable Gentleman, if we look at what happened in the United States, nothing is worse than coming forward with a plan that isn't sufficiently developed, where questions can't be answered, which ended up actually with something like $1.5 trillion being lost as a result of what was going on in America over the 10 days that followed. I'm determined that when we take action, we take it quickly, we take it decisively, then it works. And that's what I'm determined that we will do.
Vincent Cable.